The sky was ink black when my dogs went ballistic. I was out of bed in seconds, shotgun in one hand, flashlight in the other, heart already racing. Duke and Shadow, my German shepherds, were snarling at the back door, teeth bared, ears flat. That's when I saw it. Two figures in dark hoodies running across the pasture, hugging the fence line like shadows. One of them had a red can swinging in his grip, gasoline. The other clutched a lighter, flicking it like some sick countdown. They were heading straight for my barn. I didn't think. I didn't yell. I pumped the shotgun and fired a warning blast into the air. Boom! The shot shattered the silence. The two figures froze, then bolted. They dropped the gas can in a panic and tore off toward a black truck parked by the road. I chased them as far as the fence, yelling, but they were gone before I could catch a plate number. All that was left was a puddle of gasoline in the dirt and the sour, oily smell of something rotten in the wind. They had tried to burn my life down, literally. I picked up the gas can, trembling. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. This was attempted arson, a felony, and I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen. Karen, with her pastel pink jogging suits and fake smile malice. Karen, who once tried to evict me with a forged document. Karen, who brought a moving truck to my home with her entitled son grinning like he'd won the lottery. Karen, who just wouldn't quit. This was her next move, and I wasn't about to let her finish it. I stormed back inside and dialed Deputy Owens, the one man left in this town who hadn't sold his soul to politics or power. "They tried to burn my barn down," I said flatly. "I've got the gas can, the tracks, and footage." He was there in 12 minutes. We reviewed the security cam footage, two figures sneaking across the back field, clearly visible with my new infrared cameras. It wasn't just random punks. This was a hit. "Looks like someone wants you off this land real bad," Owens muttered. "And they're done playing legal." I didn't respond. I just looked out the window at the barn. The same barn my grandfather built with his bare hands after coming home from Korea. The same barn Karen wanted to bulldoze for her son's luxury mansion. I had defended my land in court. I had won. But apparently Karen didn't accept defeat. She was escalating, playing a long, dirty game, and I had just survived the first real attempt to erase me for good. Let's rewind. It all started with a phone call that shattered the quiet like a bullet through glass. I had just finished brushing down the horses, the sun hanging low over the hills, when the phone rang in my kitchen. I figured it was my sister or maybe the feed store. Instead, it was a voice I didn't recognize, male, sharp, cold. "Mr. Granger?" he asked. "Speaking," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "This is Attorney Dennis Blakely. I represent Mrs. Karen Whitmore. She's requesting that you vacate your property within 30 days. I let out a soft chuckle. "What?" "She's assigning the property to her son, Brandon Keller. He's engaged, and they've selected your ranch as their family's legacy estate. Legal action will follow if you resist." I nearly dropped the phone. "You've got the wrong person," I said slowly. "I own this ranch outright. It's not under HOA control." "The original deeds are under review," he said, clipped. "Mrs. Whitmore claims the property falls within Ridgewood Estates' HOA expansion." And just like that, he hung up. I stood frozen, phone still in hand, as a flicker of movement caught my eye outside the window. Karen Whitmore, marching across my pasture in a pink jogging suit and tennis visor, clipboard in hand. Behind her were two men in pressed suits, surveying my barn like they already owned it. I dropped the phone and stormed outside, gravel crunching under my boots. "What do you think you're doing, Karen?" I shouted. She smiled sweetly, like we were old friends catching up over coffee. "Just preparing for the transition, Howard. Brandon and Madeline are getting married next month. They need a real home. This place is perfect." "Perfect? It's not yours," I snapped. The taller of the two men began marking up a clipboard, muttering about square footage and removal zones. The shorter one pulled out a full blueprint and spread it across the hood of a black SUV. It showed my barn replaced with a glossy modern mansion, my stables demolished, a pool in place of my garden. "Stop right there," I barked. Karen only smirked and pointed to a gleaming sign hammered into the dirt by the gate. Future home of Brandon Keller and Madeline Whitmore. I nearly ripped it out of the ground, and just as my blood reached a boil, a black pickup pulled up the drive. The man who stepped out had slicked back hair, mirrored sunglasses, and a cocky grin. Brandon Keller, Karen's golden boy. He strolled toward me like we were frat brothers at a reunion. "Howard," he called. "Appreciate you making space for us, man. Means a lot. We'll name the guest house after you or something." I didn't move. Brandon extended his hand like I was supposed to shake it and smile. My fists clenched at my sides. "I never agreed to anything." Karen snapped her fingers, and the suited men walked straight toward my front door like they were about to enter. My house. I sprinted across the yard. "You get away from that door!" I roared. One of them froze with his hand on the knob, looking unsure. But Karen gave him a nod, the same smug nod I'd seen at every town meeting she ever hijacked. "You're trespassing!" I shouted. "This is criminal!" The shorter one muttered something about survey rights before I slammed the door shut in his face. "You so much as touch this doorknob again," I said through gritted teeth, "and I swear to God—" Karen stepped forward, voice syrupy sweet. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Howard. You're old. Tired." "Let the next generation take over," Brandon added with a sneer. "We'll give you a week, maybe 2 if you need help packing." I wanted to knock his teeth out. Instead, I reached for my phone. Karen's expression flickered. Brandon's smirk faded. "You've got 30 seconds to leave my land," I said, "or I call the sheriff." Karen gasped. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." I didn't even have to hit dial. Just showing the screen was enough. Brandon backed off. Karen snarled something under her breath. The men gathered their blueprints, and one by one they retreated down my gravel drive, but not before Karen turned with a final hiss. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer again, Mr. Granger. This isn't over." She was right, because the next time they came back, they brought moving trucks. 3 days later, I heard the sound of diesel engines roaring up my driveway. I stepped onto the porch and froze. A massive white moving truck was parked dead center in front of my house. Behind it, a caravan of SUVs and Karen's candy-pink Lexus with her vanity plate that read Queen 1. Standing beside the truck with arms crossed and sunglasses glinting in the morning sun was Brandon Keller. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a country club ad. Karen stood beside him, holding a gaudy Welcome Home Brandon and Maddie banner, beaming like she'd won the county fair. "What in hell?" I whispered. When Brandon spotted me, he waved like this was some family reunion. "Howard," he called. "Just in time. Come help us unload." Unload. Unload? I was halfway down the steps before I realized what I was seeing. Men in blue shirts lifting boxes, furniture, even a brand new baby crib down the ramp and toward my porch. I snapped. "You better get those boxes off my land right now," I growled. Karen sauntered forward like this was her garden party. "No need for dramatics," she purred. "We're just getting ahead of the curve. Brandon and Madeline are expecting. They need stability. This land's practically been wasted on you anyway." I held up the deed I'd gotten from the county office just days before. "This ranch is not part of your HOA. This land is mine, in full, and this piece of paper proves it." Karen barely blinked. "Oh, honey," she said, voice laced with venom. "You may own the dirt, but we own everything else. The road you use, the water pipes, the electric access points. We can make it unlivable." Brandon smirked. "We'll have your plumbing turned off by Thursday." My stomach dropped. They weren't bluffing. One of the movers started hauling a mattress across the yard toward my porch. That's when I knew. If I didn't do something now, they'd bury me under their lies. "You're trespassing," I said, louder. I raised my phone and started recording. "Every item you place here, every step you take, is a legal violation. Karen laughed. Oh, please. You think that little phone's going to save you? I kept filming. I got her face, Brandon's smirk, the movers with the crib, the truck, the sign. And just then, Brandon made the biggest mistake of all. You're senile, old man, he said. You told me this ranch was mine. I've got texts. You invited us. My hands clenched. You forged those texts. I never said a word. Karen waved her clipboard. Tell it to a judge. You're pathetic, Brandon scoffed. We're building legacy. You're just dust and weeds. I turned without a word, stormed into my truck and locked the doors. My fingers flew across the screen. I called the sheriff's department. Sheriff's office. This is Howard Granger out at Red Bluff Ranch. I have trespassers moving into my home. We're dispatching now, sir. Stay put. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff's cruisers came barreling down my drive, lights flashing, gravel flying. Karen's banner dropped to the ground. Brandon backed up fast. The movers froze mid-haul. Deputy Owens stepped out of his cruiser. Big guy, fair man. He looked at me, then at the circus on my lawn. What's going on here, Howard? I handed him my phone. Evidence. He watched the footage, every second of it. Then he turned to Karen. Ma'am, you and your people are trespassing. You need to leave this property immediately. Karen tried to play innocent. But my son, Owens cut her off. This isn't a conversation. Leave now or face arrest. Brandon looked like he wanted to argue. One glance at Owens's hand on his belt changed his mind. The movers practically sprinted to reload the truck. Boxes flew. Karen stomped, cursed, and screamed, but she left, dragging her precious banner behind her like a dirty tail. As the last vehicle pulled away, Owens clapped me on the shoulder. You all right? For now. Watch your back, he warned. That woman's not done. And he was right. Because the next morning a utility worker showed up with a clipboard and a hard hat. Got orders to shut off your water, he said. What? I barked. I pay my own bills. Yeah. Well, Ridgewood HOA filed paperwork claiming you're delinquent. Says you're under their control now. I showed him my deed. He scratched his head. Doesn't matter to me, sir. Unless someone calls this in, I have to follow the order. He gave me 1 day. 1 day to fix a forged annexation. 1 day to stop them from choking the ranch from the inside. And I knew exactly where I had to go next. I didn't sleep that night. The water shut-off notice sat on my kitchen table like a loaded gun, and every time I looked at it, I imagined Karen's smug little face smiling from behind her pearl necklace. She thought she'd found my weakness. But she underestimated the one thing I still had. Fight. By 7 a.m., I was in my truck headed straight for the Ridgewood HOA office, a glassy modern building in town that looked more like a spa than a civic institution. I parked in a visitor slot, slammed the door, and walked inside. The receptionist, a woman who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon, didn't even look up. Do you have an appointment? No, I said. But I've got a deadline before my water gets cut by someone who doesn't even own my land. That got her attention. Sir, if you're here about services, you'll have to fill out. Where's the boardroom? I growled. Sir, you can't. I was already halfway down the hall, following the sound of voices, heated ones. I pushed the door open without knocking, and there she was, Karen, standing at the head of a long table like she was Queen of England. Beside her sat 5 board members, all of them with coffee cups and folders open, nodding like obedient dogs. Karen's voice cut through the air. Once we get his water off and the permit revoked, he'll have no choice but to sell. I've already spoken to Ridgewood Development. They'll pay top dollar once Granger folds. The room fell dead silent when they saw me. Karen blinked, stunned. Howard, you're trespassing. No, you're lying. I stormed forward and slapped my deed on the table, followed by the forged annexation form she'd submitted, the one I'd gotten from the water office the night before. See that? I pointed to the signature at the bottom, my name, in clumsy, unfamiliar handwriting. I didn't sign this. That's a felony. One of the board members, an old guy with trembly hands and a nameplate that read Jenkins, leaned forward. Karen, he croaked. Is that real? Karen's face didn't move, but her eyes narrowed. This is all a misunderstanding, she said with a syrupy voice. Howard must have forgotten. He's getting older and these things can... Finish that sentence, I warned, and I swear I'll have every local reporter in this room within an hour. Another board member, a younger woman named Chloe, stood abruptly. I move to rescind the annexation paperwork immediately, she said, voice shaking. Jenkins nodded. Seconded. Karen turned red. This is outrageous. You're all making a mistake. No, Karen, I said, pulling out my phone and starting to record. The mistake was thinking you could forge my name and steal what generations before me built with their bare hands. The board voted unanimously. Within minutes, I had it in writing. The annexation reversed, the HOA banished from my land for good. Karen was forced to sign at last. Her hand trembled. As I turned to go, I leaned down and whispered, "Try to cut off my water now and I'll bury you in lawsuits." Karen hissed, "You'll regret this." No, I said calmly. I regret not recording your stupidity sooner. I left with papers in one hand and purpose in the other. But peace doesn't last when your enemy's not just crazy, she's desperate. 2 days later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up to my ranch again. Deputy Owens stepped out with a look I didn't like. "Mornin', Howard. Got something for you." He handed me an envelope. Inside, a lawsuit. Filed by Karen Whitmore. The charges: emotional distress, harassment, interference with HOA operations, intentional infliction of mental trauma. I actually laughed. I won in court once. I'll do it again. Owens shook his head. You've got the truth, Howard. But this isn't about winning. She's trying to wear you down. He was right. The day of the trial came faster than I expected. The county courthouse was packed. Karen arrived in a red designer dress like it was opening night on Broadway. Brandon was in a suit 2 sizes too small, smirking like always. They sat across from me, smug, polished, rehearsed. But I had something they didn't. Proof. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Honorable Ruth Linfield, looked over both sides before calling us to begin. Karen's lawyer started with drama. My client merely wanted a home for her son's growing family. She was met with violence, aggression, and paranoia. She can barely sleep, Your Honor. Karen dabbed invisible tears with a silk napkin. When it was my turn, I rose slowly. I have lived on my ranch for 27 years. My family before me lived on it longer. I never signed any annexation. I never invited anyone to move in. And I never gave permission for them to bring a moving truck and try to claim it as theirs. I handed over the footage. The video of Karen waving her sign, of Brandon shouting about taking over, of the movers dropping boxes on my porch like I was dead and buried. And then I showed the forged document, the fake signature. The judge flipped through the evidence slowly. Her expression darkened. Karen's lawyer objected twice. Both were overruled. By the time the final video played, Karen screaming, "We'll control everything," at the top of her lungs, the courtroom was dead silent. The judge folded her hands. This court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Granger. The plaintiff has demonstrated a pattern of harassment and deception. Case dismissed. Karen jolted forward. But the judge slammed the gavel. I will recommend this be referred to the district attorney's office for further review. Forging signatures is a criminal act. I stood, collected my documents. Brandon wouldn't even look me in the eye. Karen was white as a sheet. I had won. Again. But the war wasn't over. Because when I got home, there was a stranger sitting on my porch, in a tailored black suit holding a business card that shimmered gold. Howard Granger? He asked with a smile too slick to be real. My name's Evan Maddox. I'm with East Wind Properties. We'd like to buy your ranch. Karen promised it was almost ours. He paused. How does 2 million sound? I stared. This wasn't Karen anymore. This was bigger. $2 million. That's what the man on my porch offered me, casually, like he was handing out flyers for a bake sale. I'm with East Wind Properties, he repeated smoothly. Karen assured us the property would be available soon. We're prepared to pay above market. Very above. I stared at him. Clean shave. Gold tie clip. Not a speck of dust on his shoes. And he was standing on a ranch. No deal, I said flat. He smiled like I'd just told a joke. Everyone has a price, Mr. Granger. I buried mine with my father. Now get off my land. He handed me a business card anyway. Evan Maddox, East Wind Strategic Acquisitions, polished lettering, raised gold foil, felt like poison in my hand. We'll be in touch, he said, already turning. And then, just like that, he was gone. But I knew that name. Eastwind wasn't just any real estate firm. They were the kind that turned farmland into gated estates, that built resorts over graves, that tore out oak trees to pour concrete. Trevor Price had nothing on this. This wasn't about Brandon or even Karen anymore. This was a land grab, disguised as progress. The next week passed in a tense quiet, but my gut never stopped churning. Something was coming, something worse. And then it did. A letter. From the County Land Use Authority. My ranch, my Crescent Ridge, had been declared under review for eminent domain acquisition. Just like that. They claimed the county needed it for a public development project. Vague wording, no specifics, just like all scams start. And the listed developer? Eastwind Strategic Acquisitions. My knees buckled. Eminent domain was supposed to be for highways, hospitals, but they were going to hand it to a private firm under the table. I drove straight to the county office, demanded answers. The man behind the desk was a weasel in a suit named Harold Vickers. Smiled like a man who had just found a way to legalize theft. Nothing personal, Mr. Granger, he said. It's just business. Business? I leaned across the desk. I've got documents, court rulings, history. This land has been in my family for 80 years. That's admirable, he said with a shrug. But times change. No, not this time. I went home, grabbed everything I had, the forged documents, the court rulings, the videos, photos of my grandfather building the stables with calloused hands and borrowed nails. I even pulled out an old newspaper clipping about the Granger Ranch being the last independent landhold in the region. I needed a weapon bigger than court. I needed a spotlight. That night, I drove to the Channel 3 newsroom in Red Ridge. The reporter was a woman named Jenna Ruiz. Sharp, feared. She once took down a senator with 3 phone calls and a lunch receipt. I laid it all out. Every lie. Every blueprint. Every text Karen had sent. By the time I finished, she didn't ask if it was true. She asked for the footage. 2 days later, the segment aired. Local rancher targeted in secret land grab by developer with HOA ties. It exploded. News outlets picked it up, then blogs, then national headlines. They found Karen's emails to Eastwind. They found Brandon bragging on social media about owning the ridge before the lawsuit had even been filed. They found the forged annexation documents in HOA archives, traced right back to Karen's laptop. People lost their minds. Protests flooded the Ridge County building. Veterans groups, farmers, activists, townies, even suburban families. They marched with signs. Hands off Granger Ranch. This land is not for sale. From grandfather to grandson, you can't bulldoze legacy. By the end of the week, Karen had vanished. Word was she tried to file a civil suit against the mayor of Silver Creek for stealing her sun exposure. The judge had it tossed in under 10 minutes. Eastwind pulled out of the deal. Evan Maddox issued a press statement claiming he had been misled by local partners and had no knowledge of improper tactics. But the damage was done. The county reversed the eminent domain ruling. Trevor Price was subpoenaed. And Karen Whitmore's name became the punchline of every bad joke at every town hall meeting for a year. I won, but not just for me, for the ranchers still holding on, for the grandkids of men who fought in wars and came home to build fences with their bare hands, for the ones who believed land meant more than money.